Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Give a man a microphone, he goes nuts with it. My name is Joergensen. I work at Rutgers Camden School of Law, and what I'm going to talk about today is automated or trying to automate metadata extraction from documents. It's one of my favorite fields of endeavor, and one that in the area of trying to build things like digital collections is something that is a really valuable first step in putting together a decent collection. You can get a bunch of documents from just about anywhere, but what are you going to do with them? The first thing you really need to do is start identifying useful metadata, almost always from the document itself, and then use that as a basis of building the collection, of creating your interface, keeping track of your materials. Typically, this is one of the most expensive parts of the digital library creation process, and which, it brings you from somewhere around potentially a penny a page, which things can be potentially done at, to 5, 10, 15 cents a page, which may not sound like a whole lot of money to some people, but when you're talking about, eventually 200, 500, a million pages, this becomes a real serious issue. So, my own approach to it that I've used over the past 10 years is a hybrid approach. What I'm going to show you today is a fairly simple example of what I do when I work on a new digital collection. But also what I'm going to be talking about is the fact that I don't intend what I'm doing here to be completely foolproof. And it's the first stage of a hybrid approach. You can take the approach that most librarians who do digital library work tell me to do, and that's it. This all needs to be done manually by somebody examining the document. And again, that's where the costs come in. Or you can talk to people who just do computer coding and say, you can't get that 100% accurate, so don't do it at all. I do it, and I can get maybe an 80% success rate and accuracy rate. At that point, I'm at the point where I can then go over and do manual cleanup at a rate where it's cost effective to do and time effective to do. So, for example, what I'm going to be showing you is a document from the New Jersey Supreme Court. That material is at the point where I do New Jersey court downloads, because we maintain New Jersey appellate decisions on our website. And from 100 cases that will come in during a day, I'll have to spend maybe 5 minutes doing data correction of the metadata. And at that point, I can do 100 cases a day and maintain the entire collection. So, using the computer for what it's best for, and then using people for what they are best for, and putting it all together. So, having said that, let's talk about how to make the computer best at what it's best for. Again, like what I started out with, the purpose here is to get things done real cheap. There are better ways to do this that are more expensive, but this will get it done. And the way to do it is I use the Perl programming language, and I'm going to show you some samples in Perl. There are many computer programming scripting languages that'll do this in, but it all comes down to using regular expressions and using them intelligently. And again, the goal is maybe to get it perfect, not necessarily perfect, but to make it affordable. So, to those of you that are not, actually, is there anybody who's not even familiar with the phrase regular expressions? Because I can talk. Okay, we'll all wait for Mr. Hayward. I mean, I can talk more about them if you like. I mean, it's basically a set of programming rules where you can actually describe patterns of things, like a quote from William Shakespeare. So it goes well beyond what most people think of as searching a document, which is limited to things maybe like, you know, word find or a Boolean set. And that's one side of it. The other side of it, however, is dealing with document structure, to be able to identify where things are going to be. And the way to approach this is to realize that almost all documents have some structure. That's an awfully vague statement, and it's meant to be awfully vague, and it's also going to presage a lot of the frustrations of doing this kind of thing. But usually, very often, particularly with legal documents, there's enough structure to allow you to do something that's pretty reliable. Again, that's an awfully qualified statement, but the idea is to get the accuracy level to where it's affordable. And how do we do this? How do we find the structure? How do we work with it? We start out with the title of the talk, staring at it. And that helps a great deal. I just wanted to find some way to get people in to see the thing, so I used the cheap device of quoting a movie. So that's it for the PowerPoint. You can thank me for that later. But what I'd really like to do is just walk you through, and this again is very scaled down and very simple. The real job is more sophisticated than what I'm showing you, but the basic outline of the process is going to be illustrated fairly well here. And so what I've got is a series of very short, and purposely short to make them easy to follow, Perl scripts that can just let us walk through what needs to be done at each stage so we can parse through the structure of a document and then parse through the identifying features of those parts, and to show you a way that this kind of thing can be done. So let's start out with a doc. So this is something just as it's downloaded straight from the New Jersey court's FTP site. It's a New Jersey Supreme Court opinion. And this is just how it looks. It's in Word format. And, of course, this is in LibreOffice, but, you know, it looks the same in Word. First thing to do when parsing through this is to convert it to HTML. But what can we see here just right off the bat? Real easy to see. There is a syllabus. And with this kind of stuff, this is very consistent. Syllabus, a disclaimer, and then the caption of the case with usually the docket number there in parentheses. Sometimes it's missing. It depends on the secretary. The argued and decided dates. Sometimes there's a hard return there. Sometimes somebody forgets a comma. Sometimes people put in 2 spaces. You kind of get the picture of the kinds of things that are going to be frustrating. But nevertheless, this order of things tends to obtain. The name of the judge and some miscellaneous commentary on the judge, and then you get into the syllabus proper with paragraphs. So, how can we deal with this? Well, the first thing is to put it into some kind of format where it can be properly parsed by something fairly easy. So, converting it to HTML, and this I've actually used actually an OpenOffice plugin called Jod Converter. We used to use WV-HTML, and back in the WordPerfect days, WP2HTML, both of which were pretty good. The problem with WV-HTML is it gave us a very rich set of identifying and formatting tags. So rich that the HTML files were regularly larger than the original Word binary files. It was insane. But this is nice, fairly clean HTML. Again, the structure is preserved, which is nice. But what are we really dealing with here? What we are really dealing with here is this. This is what we're really dealing with here. This is the raw HTML of the document that I just showed you in the browser. Now, this is actually not too bad as far as cleanliness goes. It's still very messy, and even though most of the nonsense is all in tags, it can be hard to see where the real structure is of the document. And again, how do we get the stuff out? You got to get it by first seeing what's going on and staring at the document. This is not particularly useful. So the easy thing to do is to strip the tags out. Where is my script? With something simple and easy. I'm going to use my laser pointer. So a simple Perl script. In and out, we're taking in that HTML file that you were just looking at. What am I writing out? I'm writing out a new file that's got the same name, but the word stripped in it. It's going to be a stripped down file. And here are a couple of regular expressions. Angle bracket, angle bracket. This is a slash that has been escaped, so it's not seen as a special character, and then a question mark. What that means, explained in English, is that there may or may not be one slash in that position. So what does that mean? It can be an either start a font or end font tag. And then the word font, and if there's any style information after the word font, it'll include that by the dot being anything at all, 0 or more of anything at all, and don't be greedy, and the angle bracket. So what is that doing? What it's doing is it's stripping out every instance of a font tag. And if we go back to the original, and if you just look over that for a couple of seconds, you'll see there's actually quite a lot of font tags all over the place here with little bits of style information. So they're all going to go. The next thing that's going to go is, again, the same thing. The beginning or ending of a div tag with any kind of style information, get rid of them all. All of the paragraph tags. But, of course, what's the difference with this one here? I don't have 0 or 1 slashes. So any end paragraph, so slash paragraph, is not going to be gotten rid of by this. So we're going through and we're stripping it all out. The last thing is if we have a body tag, make the flag 1. I use flags a lot. And up here, if the flag equals 1, prints out. So what does that mean? If the flag is still 0, so until you hit the tag labeled body, you get no output in the final document at all, because we don't need any of that header information. So we get rid of it, and we'll have a nice stripped down file. Once that's run, we get this. We didn't get rid of the line breaks, the BRs. We didn't get rid of the end paragraphs. And maybe we could have gotten rid of the bolds and the underlines. Whatever. But at this point, it's clean enough so that we can see the structure of the document much more easily and clearly. And at the same time, particularly keeping these end paragraph tags, we've still got a little bit of the tagging there that can be useful to identify more of the structure. One of the things I like to do is, since it can be difficult for us to get easy and useful squib information, a good quick and dirty summary of the case, the first paragraph of the syllabus is usually a good substitute for that. So what I like to do is grab the first paragraph, and at a certain point, this is going to come in very handy in not overrunning and grabbing more than I really want. So that's what we got. So the first thing I want to do is grab something near the top. Now, you've already seen the stripping out. So what we're doing now is I'm reading in the big dirty file right now, and I just had the stripped down file just to show you what we're actually working with. So, but I'm stripping this down on the fly and then parsing through what we have left. And then going back here and looking at the actual document. The syllabus is not a part of the opinion of the court, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This text is pretty stable and is not going to change a whole lot. So if I've got a string that identifies a substantial chunk of that, I can say, okay, there's nothing going on here, but I'm getting near something that I want to have. And so what's going to happen? I can start going through this text, and again, using the flag equals 0, flag equal 1. Flag equals 0 means I'm just starting to read the document, and I don't have anything I need yet. But once I hit this, I'm starting to get near the caption, but this text still doesn't mean anything. So what do I get to that I know that I'm really close to stuff? When I get to an end paragraph tag, I know that I'm done with this, and any non-tag text at that point is going to be the caption. So what do we have here on get caption? Not a part of the opinion of the court is something that I'm looking for. And when I see this as a regular expression, but as a literal string, we set the flag to equal 1, which in this case just means get ready and start looking for this. And so if the flag equals 1 and we see an end p tag, then flag equals 2, because anything after that that's not itself an HTML tag is the caption. And so make the flag 3, or make the flag 2. And if the flag is 2, start grabbing it and call it the caption. And then once you get to the words argued or decided, which as you saw before is where they're announcing the two dates of decision, well, that's not the caption anymore. So make the flag 3. When the flag's 3, of course, it's not 2 anymore, and that caption variable is full and stopped, and you've got whatever you got. You've got the caption. And it's just a question then of cleaning out the remaining HTML tags or any hard returns that are in there, and you've got the information. So that works. The next thing is a little crazy. Get date. Once we see the argued and decided, we've got the caption, we make the flag equal 3, so we stop grabbing caption information. But then we start looking for date information. So if the flag equals 3, we can start looking for a date. Now, I've actually got a couple of things going on in here. We're capturing the judge information here as well. But let's go right to here. And this is a pretty reliable piece of code talking about what a date is. The date is always put down, as you can see right here. Well, even better. as you can see right here, it's a formal American date. So month, day, and year. This may or may not be all caps, but the first letter is always going to be a capital. Otherwise, it wouldn't be proper grammar and style in an English document. So we start out, where the heck am I? Looking for a capital letter between A and Z, any capital letter. We could narrow that down a little more, but we don't have to. And then lowercase letters, so one capital letter, and then a string of one or more lowercase letters. That's going to capture the month, plus some non-character spaces, one or more, because again, the secretaries may have hit the space bar twice. They may have put in a tab accidentally. We want to capture all of that kind of thing. And then this is the generic symbol for digits. One or more digits with the plus sign after it. And then a little more white space, and then 4 digits. 4 digits for the year. This non-character thing will cover a comma, as well as any number of spaces. So if they forgot to put the comma in and just one space, this covers it. If they put the comma and a space, a comma, forget to put the space in, etc., etc., etc. And then the last thing is the series of little parentheses. In Perl, at least, and in most regular expression languages, the way this works is these parentheses, unless you escape them with a backslash in front of them. If you put a backslash in front of them, it'll look for parentheses in the text. But without the backslash, this is actually making each one into a special variable for very temporary purposes. And it's going to name them just sequentially. First set of parentheses 1, this one 2, this one 3. And that's what we have right here. Month is going to be whatever this is. Day is going to be whatever here. Year is the 4 digits at the very end. Not too bad, right? I mean, you were telling me, you've never seen code before, and several people I know in this room have not. This is fairly basic stuff to go through. And even if you're not writing it, if you look at it long enough, it can make sense to you. So we've got a date, and then after you've got the date, if you see something like in the New Jersey courts, you're either going to be a justice or a chief justice or a presiding judge or a judge of the appellate division. Sometimes they sit with the Supreme Court by designation, and sometimes they're the junior people. They have to write the decision, and so you actually get the judge of appellate division as the author. So look for them all. But what are we looking for? The W lowercase with a backslash in front of it means characters, alphanumeric, of any case, capital or not. So a bunch of them, and we've got the parentheses, so we're grabbing the name there with a comma, a little more white space, and then with kind of a judge designation of any kind, we're going to grab this and we're going to have the name of the judge. And we're going to call it judge. So what do we have at this point? We've got the date of decision, month, day, and year. We've got the caption of the case. And we've also got the name of the judge. Finally, and again, if you look back at the document we've got here, in this case we have Judge Alvin, judge, with the J there, writing for a unanimous court. Well, that's nice. We can either have that or not have that. And then you get the text. The first paragraph starts here, right after the judge designation. The first paragraph starts here and ends with that end paragraph tag that we didn't strip out. So once we've got a judge's name, then we look for an end paragraph tag, and that's going to be the end of the judge section. And then everything between that end paragraph tag and this end paragraph tag is going to be our summary. Notice, however, you have to pay attention to it because the line breaks that are in there can be very misleading. So we're going to go by the tags and not by what seems to be there. So we have our final thing here. So we found we found the judge and made flag equal 4. And again, sometimes if it's just a run-of-the-mill case, nobody's going to put their name on it, and it'll be labeled per curiam. So if we miss this with flag equal 3 and catch this with flag equal 3, well, then we still have a judge. We're just going to call it per curiam and make the flag equal 4. And if the flag equals 4 and we get an end paragraph, well, that's the end of the thing like writing for unanimous court or, you know, sitting by designation or whatever other little bits they put in there that's not part of the summary. And then we make the flag 5. And once the flag equals 5, we start grabbing whatever we see and calling it summary until we get to yet another end paragraph tag, and then we're done. The last thing we want to do, to the extent that we want to do any of this at all, is maybe a little cleanup. We've got a judge, we've got a caption, we've got a summary, but as you could see from the source, there's still going to be underlining tags and A tags. Sometimes they'll have the A name stuff there, sometimes they don't. If it was reliably there, it would be wonderful stuff to ID our stuff for us, but it's not reliable. We want to strip all that out. We also want to get rid of the new line characters because we want to treat it like HTML. So we don't necessarily want those new lines in there. So what we'll do is just strip it all out. Anything that's a tag, get rid of. And this, you know, this question mark makes this a lazy thing, so anything that's actually between two brackets, angle brackets, gets stripped out. And we have that for each one of these kinds of things. Anything that's in parentheses in the caption is going to be nonsense, so we tend to get rid of it. This designates the beginning of the string that you've captured. Any spaces that are at the beginning of the string, get rid of. Any spaces that are at the end of the string, get rid of. And this is a special designator for a carriage return or a new line character. Turn them into a single space, because if you don't, you're going to get words stuck together. And then anything that's 2 spaces or more, which can be created by this if they actually put in a space, make it into 1 space. So everything will look nice and even. And if we run this, what are we going to get? And in this case, instead of uploading it to a database or doing anything, I'm just going to, just for example purposes, I'm going to have it print out. What I would normally do at this point, this would be part of a big loop. We download 100 cases, and those cases are all getting converted into HTML and put through a process very similar to what I just showed you, and through a loop. And each time it goes through the loop, it's going to end up with all these pieces of data. And then at that point, what we actually do is write it out to a log file. And once all the cases have gone through, the program pauses and brings everything up in a text editor. And at that point, if there are any errors in it, we can just scan through it, see if there are any errors, correct whatever needs to be corrected, and then exit out of the text editor and have everything go on and actually upload it into a database, and also reformat these into well-formed meta tags and insert it back into the HTML document as header information that can then identify the document in a machine-readable format, which is a very important thing to do as far as archiving and conservancy is concerned. So we do both of those things. We do the upload it to the database for easy, quick access to actually use the stuff, and then we insert it back in the form of well-formed meta tags in order to preserve the document long term. But what do we have at the end here? The last one is final. And again, it starts out reading the document and then parsing through it. And the results come out just like we like. Nicely formatted date, the caption with all of the HTML tagging, and everything stripped out, including spaces, make them all into individual spaces, so it's nice and nice, ready to upload into a database. The judge is Albin, just the word Albin with nothing else. And we have that first paragraph of text as a quick and dirty summary of the case. Now, again, this was a fairly simple example using a fairly regularly formatted document. But I could explain it to you in exactly a half an hour in ways that even people who don't program can really see what's going on. So what can you do if you actually think about it and actually work at it and actually pay attention to it with more sophisticated documents or documents where there's less regularity involved? I have found that we can deal with a pretty wide variety of documents and get pretty good results out of them, such that we can handle documents of a pretty irregular format and still get reliable data out of them. The biggest challenge I have is actually dealing with things like PDF documents. Sometimes I get things in doc format and in PDF format. And the PDF used to be a doc, of course, but now it's a PDF. And I can, convert that into text, laid out text. And at that point, what do you have? You're still going to have the same basic structure, but it's going to be tagged up differently, and everything's going to be spaced slightly differently. And then you're going to have the Perl script using slightly different regular expressions to look for little variations in things, but you can still get things going. It's still, in the end, doable, which is what I started out with. How can we get this down so that it's reliably at the point where you can afford to do it and you can get a lot of work done in 10 minutes? Well, this is a good way to do it. The only other thing that I wanted to show you, which is not technically part of Men Staring at Code, of course it's not Men Staring at Code, but where am I? FOA. This is some of the most pain-in-the-neck stuff I've got to work with. This is a scanned OCR doc, which you can see because there's writing there. This is OCR'd, but it's it's actually cleaner in the scan than it looks here in this kind of low-res thing here. But what can we do? We can identify enough off there to make some decent guesses. And the interface I'm showing you now is one that I use on a regular basis, and I actually get work study students to get a lot of my work done with. And all it is real simple, real clunky HTML forms where I have a big, document tag here, a text area tag, where we show the PDF document, and a little fill-in form over here. And in order to make it real fast and easy for the students, we even put in the guesses after the guesses have been made. And then all they need to do is correct it. And if sometimes all of the guesses are bad and these come out all blank, that's fine too. They just have to fill it all in by cutting and pasting. Maybe even typing, but we don't like to make them type. And so they can put in this case, all they'd really have to do is check the spelling of Pemberton, which is correct in this case, and then put in the date of the decision by scanning through. And in this case, there's a good reason why the date's missing, because that doesn't look like much of anything as far as a computer's concerned. And then when they're done, and I'm actually going to fill this out, 2011, 02, 17. They click, they can look it over to make sure it's good. It's good. And then we have the next document, which is a second copy of the same thing, which I need to get rid of, but nevertheless. It's not too bad to do. It takes some time to set up. It takes some thought to put into. There is lead time to it. But if you're interested in creating digital libraries, this is the methodology for going about setting up the structures for doing it. And it's one of the things that is very rarely talked about, and is, when you're planning this kind of thing and thinking about how to do it, you've got all the documents together, you've scanned them, somebody's given you a bunch of stuff, and now the question is, what the hell am I going to do with all of these files? And then the question is okay, let's create a database, and then we're going to sit around and slowly code up the metadata, and it's going to take years, and we're going to get frustrated, and it's never going to get done. It's going to become too expensive, and it's never going to get done. A computer guy is going to get a hold of it and try and automate it, and it's not going to be perfect, and so it's never going to get done. Well, this is the approach that we've taken, and we get stuff done. So, any questions? Too much detail in too little time? Too little detail in too much time? More likely. Yeah.
I'm drowning possibilities.
Off and on in the history of CALI, there have been people, most of whom are in this room, who have actually given primers on things like regular expressions. And, or tried. Yeah. And when I was putting this together or thinking about doing something like this, I thought, well, it's time to do it again because nobody's bothered for a while. But in this case, let's give it some context to try and make it seem like something actually worth doing, which it very much is. So I've tried to keep the regular expression coding part of this very scaled down and simple, maybe too simple, but just to be able to show you what's going on and what can be done. You can do a lot of extremely sophisticated things with regular expressions. I've just shown you the tip of the iceberg of the kinds of things that you can do with it. But even just with the tip of the iceberg, you can clean things up, you can grab things, and then if you start thinking in terms of process flow and data flow, well, then you can say, okay, when you start looking for this. And when you see this, well, then you start looking for this. And when you see this, when you found it, stop looking for that and look for something else. And if you put some effort into it in a fairly short period, it's not going to be too short, but in a fairly short period of time, you can actually get quite a lot done. And as you can see, I mean, this script is not too sophisticated. Even with all of my spaces and things, it's how many lines? Well, 87 lines, but I've got a lot of spaces in here. And the results are nice and clean. And as you can see, this data is extremely useful. I mean, you upload this into a database, and you've got the document identified. I didn't bother grabbing the docket number, which would be another key piece of information. But as you can see now, I mean, with a tiny bit more effort, you'd have that too, and you'd have a key field for a database. And then once you have that into a database, then you have a basis of retrieval. And then send the end document through something like Swishy, which I was talking about in a session earlier, where those well-formed meta tags where we reinsert this stuff will create secondary indices. Secondary indices so you can search on caption, you can search on date of decision, you can search on judge if you want, or you can even search on the summary information to make kind of, to really narrow down your results. And you can do some really good sophisticated searching that really starts approaching the utility of the large commercial vendors, but be able to offer it for free. We'll point out too, one of the things that I'm doing right now is talking and allowing people to think up questions based upon what I've said before. So if you do have a question, please jump in. Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I'd like to make a comment. You froze good, but you didn't put one character of documentation in there. And speaking from experience, going through thousands of lines of undocumented code, I don't have a hell of an idea what the guy's doing, right? So, I mean, while you're creating it, take the time to identify what it's doing so that yourself or successor or down the line, what's happening.
Absolutely. And in fact, every programmer says this, and they're all lying, but I'm not lying. This was just sample code that I just wrote for this. My actual production code is full of comments. So, but you're right. It's important. Sir, hand over this direction. Sir?
Just also not a question, an observation, but also do analysis.
Yeah. So doing quantitative analysis of information once you're lifting it out? Yeah, and in fact, I mean, one of the things you can do is start, again, if you put this into a database, at that point you can start asking the database interesting questions. How many cases are coming out on certain dates? How many cases does the judge put out? And how do you correlate that with certain words, which will give you topics? Absolutely.
You presented some really good tools in Perl for handling things. Have you had the urge to engage in social engineering with the people that generate the documents to aid you as another tool?
No, they engineer me.
Okay.
I have tried, but with the kind of stuff that I deal with court decisions that come out of court systems from judges, and try telling a judge what to do. That's really what it comes down to. And it's, even if it's not the judges, it's an entrenched bureaucracy with their own thoughts on who should be saying what needs to be done. And I am an affiliated end user who's not in their system. But yeah, if they would start coming out with explicitly regularly formatted doc files, that would be so much better, right? God forbid they should actually start marking things up in XML, because why not, right? Their docketing system could immediately lap up all they're doing and create all kinds of efficiencies. Right, it could be absorbed right into their case management system as they write, and even version stuff, and keep control of the versioning so that they have more accurate output at the end of it. But that's going to be a couple 50, 60 decades
I'm thinking
before most court
to some
systems.
cases of basically taking, if there are several people that are producing the same kind of document, you pick the best one, then you go back and you clean it up a little bit more, and then you send them all the cleaned up template with some instructions on how to use it. And you still have to do the kind of things that you're talking about, but in terms of giving yourself an easier set of, or a more regular set of incoming data.
No, I mean, at that point, if something like that were to happen, then your error rate from the regular expression process that I'm going through here very rapidly gets very close to zero, if not zero. And then, you know, and then you've really got some efficiency, and then your costs are, you know, incredibly low, and you can do all kinds of things. So,
Of course, by that point, you've already written all of the exceptions to catch all the different methods.
yeah. Well, you know, and also it works the way it works in practice, and that, you know, telling judges and judges' secretaries even more worse than that is like herding cats. I mean, there are still a couple of New Jersey court secretaries who learned how to type back in the 60s. And if anybody is alive here who was alive back then, I learned how to type with a typewriter that started with the number 2. Because 0 was your capital O and 1 was lowercase l, because you know, the little keys had to fly out. There are still secretaries who are doing that, and that's a whole series of exceptions that are written into my code too.
Well, in situations like that, when you do reveal codes or show paragraph marks in a Word document, you can spot them because they'll never use left, you know, they'll never use right align. It'll be tab, 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 tab.
Yeah.
Date.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, this was a very simplistic example just for illustration purposes. But when you really start digging into this stuff, you start finding all that kind of stuff, and you know, the error correction starts iterating for quite a while, and then you find all of this stuff. Having said that, what also happens is that the kinds of nonsense that are going to screw you up, that you have to write exceptions for, themselves tend to fall into patterns. And knowing that is also an extremely useful thing. Like the fact that the old secretary will do tab, 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 tab instead of right align is something that can be relied on. And that will be a definite pattern. And when you see a whole series of tab codes, start looking for those lowercase l's instead of, you know, instead of 1. And they fall into sets of things. So, you know, my actual production code is actually much more extensive than this, and there are lots of little subroutines. So if you start seeing something that looks like the crazy lady with the tabs, split out into the old lady subroutine and do what that needs to be done. But in the end, it works out. Thomas.
XML, where exactly are you going to place it? I mean, do you face that in New Jersey as well? Because this technology side versus substance side is very common. Again, I don't know.
Yeah, and there's very few people to talk about. On this level of the New Jersey Supreme Court, that's actually fairly easy stuff because they seem to have a common template that they use, and so I get a high degree of regularity. The New Jersey Appellate Division, so that's the one court below that with a lot more judges and a lot more secretaries. They have style guidelines that are pretty reliable, which is not the same thing as a template, of course. So I get a lot more variation, even though you get a lot of visual regularity out of the thing. And then, of course, you get some secretaries who really know their word processing and start using macros and date codes instead of typing in the dates. But, well, that's what it is. And then, one step lower is the Office of Administrative Law, which, with their initial decisions at least, they have a suggested style guideline, which they may or may not comply with. And then I do the New Jersey Federal District Court, where every judge is a kingdom unto himself.
So if I say to you, John, I want to get all the lowercase L's out of New Jersey, okay, that's a really big one. I want to meet the man who can make that happen. How many men do I have?
In actual practice, that would not happen unless you got a hold of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the state of New Jersey and convinced that person that this is a needful thing. And if you were to do that and succeed, then it would happen. And if you were not to do that, then there would be nothing at all. So it would be kind of it's very much an all or nothing thing. But even then, with something like this, I just imagine there would be a lot of institutional resistance to change because people would be, they do the things that they've been doing for however long they've been doing it. I mean, when I first started doing digital libraries, it started out with, I convinced our dean to write a letter to the Chief Justice of the state of New Jersey saying, you should make this stuff available to us and we'll make a digital library out of it and it'll be way cool. Right? The Chief Justice thought it was a great thing and said, okay, make it happen. And then the people who had talked to my predecessors a couple of times and said, no, absolutely not. There's no way we would do that, and told us to go away, all of a sudden were sitting in a meeting with us talking about how to make it happen, giving us the phone number and password to their BBS systems so we could dial in. And this guy's job was to maintain their BBS system. And at that point, we were well into the age of FTP, but his job was to maintain the BBS. Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I mean, never underestimate institutional inertia. So I'll be around in the lounge for anybody who wants to speak with me later. Thank you all for your time, and I hope this was instructive.
Posted a few to nowhere. Or like AW. This one's stuck on. Somebody spilled something on this and it's stuck on.
There we go.
What you got?
Went out. I just tweeted what I wrote down.
It's spilled on there.
Yeah. Okay. So